are on the air. We'll start in a second. All right. Mr. Stark, are you guys ready to go? Good evening. We're going to call to order the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of Richfield. It is October 21st, 2019, and it's 7:01 p.m. Our first order of business would be approval of the minutes of the City Council, HRA, and Planning Commission work session of September 16th, 2019, and the HRA regular meeting of September 16th, 2019, as well as the City Council, Housing and Redevelopment Authority, and Planning Commission work session of September 24th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or corrections? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And we have approved those 3 sets of minutes. Next, we have the consent agenda, and I'll turn it over to Executive Director Stark to report on that.
Thank you, Chair Sepple. The consent calendar contains items which are acted upon by the HRA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, all of the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved, and no further HRA action would be necessary. Tonight, we only have one item on the consent agenda, and that is the consideration of an adjustment to the payment standard for the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. And that concludes tonight's consent calendar.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
John, on the historical context and everything, it talks about that the HUD establishes a fair market rent for the Twin City metropolitan area. And I'm wondering, next paragraph in the executive summary talks about new payment standards were effective. No, wait a minute. Last adjustment made by the HRA here was June 1st, 2019. We're making another one now. How often does the HUD establish a fair? Why are we doing it 6 months after we just made one?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Housing Manager Urban to respond to that.
Okay.
Chair Supple, members of the commission, they do just once a year, but we were waiting and waiting for it to come out. It was late, and we
Okay.
knew that we didn't have a good number for efficiency apartments because we have so few in town, but we have new developments coming on with affordable efficiencies, and so we needed a better number for that. And so Lynette Chambers, our multifamily housing specialist, felt it was important that we need to be in compliance, and so that's why we did sort of an interim step, knowing that when the numbers came out, so she did her best guess at what they would be, and she was slightly under.
So HUD made us do it.
HUD makes us do it right, and they
Okay.
just aren't always as timely with
All right,
the
that-
numbers as we've needed them to be.
That was the only question I had.
Thank you.
All right. Does someone want to move the consent calendar?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar, which is a proposed adjustment to the payment standard for Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. We have passed the consent agenda. All right. Next, we are going to move on to consideration of an amendment to the contract for private development for 6812 Emerson Lane. Mr. Stark?
Yes, thank you, Chair Supple. Again, I'm going to be asking Julie Urban to present the staff report. Just, and I know she's going to cover this, but just as a way of reminder, the baseline we're at right now is that the HRA did already approve a 5-house development agreement. So that's, the starting point as we move forward.
Chair Supple, members of the HRA. Back in July, the HRA approved a contract for private development with Enders Custom Homes for the construction of 5 single-family homes and required public improvements at 6812 Emerson Lane. Given the high cost of public improvements required to make the property buildable, the HRA agreed to sell the property for $1. The preliminary survey showed multiple discrepancies from the 2004 survey, which had been provided to the HRA when they acquired the property. The most problematic correction moved the northwest property line to the east, reducing the size of the HRA's parcel. When the 5-home scenario was evaluated using these new dimensions, it became apparent that none of the 5 lots would be able to meet subdivision requirements, and the road might also need to be narrowed. So the builder has developed a 4-home proposal that would meet all subdivision requirements and would allow the public road to remain 26 feet in width. Development costs for the site remain estimated at $310,000, the same amount that would be required for 5 or 4 homes. Spreading the development costs out over 4 homes leads to a higher land cost of approximately $77,500 per lot, and an increased home price of $373,000. It's unclear if the housing market would support these prices on this site. Staff has ordered an appraisal and expects to receive it in the next couple of weeks. If the land value for 4 lots does not appraise at $77,500 per lot and does not support higher home prices, the project may require additional subsidy to cover the development costs. Staff is proposing an amendment to the contract to allow a reduction in the number of homes built from 5 to 4 and up to $60,000 in further subsidy, contingent on proof of need from the results of the appraisal and evidence from the builder. The reason we're bringing it forward to you without the appraisal numbers is just in an attempt to still allow for some work to be done yet this construction season. Delaying it another month would mean for sure we would have to put everything off till spring. This way there is still a possible chance that some work could get done depending on the speed of the plat review. So in order for that to happen, staff is asking the HRA to decide on the following changes to the contract. Decrease the number of homes to be built on the site from 5 to 4, approve an HRA subsidy of up to $60,000 to offset the development costs of the site, contingent on evidence supporting that need. The exact amount would be approved by the executive director, and the amount, along with specific source of funds, would be reported back to you probably in November or December. And then this would also extend the closing deadline to June 30th of 2020 and completion deadline to June 30th of 2021 to account for the delay we've had in reviewing this additional information and change. Just would add, I think this is a case where, at least in the Community Development Department, we have to wear 2 hats. We are representing you as the owner of the property and looking for a financially feasible development, but then we also have planning staff who have to enforce our subdivision regulations. And in this case, just the 5 lots, it became more and more clear the more details we were given that there would be a lot of exceptions needed. So while the land area that's available is the same, it hasn't changed. What we own has changed, and so there are definitely would be exceptions that would need to be asked for with a 5-lot proposal. So your job as the HRA is, of course, as the owner, but I think you have to have in mind that planning piece in the back of your head, because for you to approve something that then the council feels that it can't approve doesn't get us anywhere. So if you have any further questions.
So I think there are going to be some questions from HRA commissioners. It looks like Mr. Stark would like to add something, and I know that the neighborhood would also like to speak. So why don't we start with Mr. Stark?
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add one quick point, Madam Chair, and that is the recommendation that's before you was at the impetus of staff. When we got the survey back, we discussed it amongst ourselves. So this isn't something that came to us from the builder. This is a recommendation we came to. I'll let the builder speak for himself if the opportunity avails itself, whether he would prefer 4 or 5 homes. But our feeling, as Ms. Urban said, wearing the 2 hats that we wear, was that 4 with 4 presented a better land use solution. The trade-off, though, is it is less economically feasible. We're estimating to a degree of $60,000, and that's the trade-off.
All right, are there other questions? All right, Commissioner Breeze Daniels?
Would you say the trade-off also includes future tax revenue from these houses, or would that stay neutral?
Obviously, with 4 homes, well, I mean, there could be 4 more expensive homes are going to generate slightly more individually, but overall, the 5 would still generate more taxes. We didn't do a detailed look at that, and I apologize if that's something that
Just came up. Thank you.
we did a rough estimate. I mean, and we know back from our work sessions that any return on our investment is going to take a long time. You know, we can look at sort of the other goals that it achieves, not just tax base in terms of creating housing opportunities, diversifying our housing stock, all those goals that we work on with our other programs.
Thank you.
Other questions, Commissioner Elliott?
I'm not sure that I'm prepared to vote up or down on this until that appraisal comes in.
Okay.
I'm much more comfortable working with known figures rather than anticipating and speculating on what's going to happen or what has to may or may not be done in the future. And, you know, appraisers are like everybody else. If they promise it this month, it may come next month. But let's hope, or else we can put a light of fire under them to make sure we get it. Because then we're at least dealing with concrete numbers and not speculation and holding out and tying up $60,000 while, you know, through the next 12 or 18 months. So that's my first comment. I think that as I look at it today, lacking some of the information I need, I'd vote no if we have to take a vote today. Then I do have a couple questions. And one thing, if I may, would it be possible going forward, if we're going to have an amended contract, can you give me the whole contract redlined? Because I've got a question like on the amended contract. So all we got was amended with deletions and additions. But then when you're referencing other parts of the contract, even though they're not deleted or amended, then I want to take a look at what that says. In particular, on section 3.7 on the amended, the closing, it talks about last line. The builder will provide the HRA with 5 crossed out, 4 separate cash deposits for the escrow accounts to be established for each lot pursuant to section 5.1. So I need to look at 5.1, and I've got that, but it's buried in 4 shelves of Richfield City paperwork. And so
Sure.
That's why it's just easier. If you're going to redline it, that's fine, but give me the entire contract so I can reference the amendment and any other sections that are cited in there, if that's okay. I don't want to add work to you, but I think it just makes it much easier for me to review.
No, that's fine, especially when we're not providing paper copies. It's not a big deal to,
Right,
you know.
right.
Sure, sorry about that. Happy to do that.
And then I've got a question on the language in the critical timing issues. And this kind of coincides with 3.7, because what it says there, the builder won't close on the HRA property until buyers are identified. Is that a corollary to what was in the original contract that said you need to have 5 purchase agreements before we'll let you close?
That's what we discussed. I think part of it too is just him saying, I'm not interested in buying the property until I have buyers identified. He hasn't felt he's able to market this property at this point until he knows how many he can build and at what the price point
But that's
is.
not
so.
saying the same thing that will have those buyers buy, because we've got a closing date set. So I don't want to give the buyer back out, because we got a closing date set of June 20th, 2020, or June of 2020. So if he doesn't have those, we've got the property tied up and $60,000 tied up until he comes to us in June and says he's either got 4 escrow accounts or not. So I'm not interested in giving him that flexibility and taking it away from us.
Can I
Have them or you don't.
ask a follow-up to that? I thought, wasn't there a deadline sooner than June, or is it because
Yep.
we're switching to June that extended the deadline? Is
Right.
that
It
what you're
extends the
talking-
deadline because we've, yes, spent the last couple months wrestling with 4 versus 5 and trying to find a layout that works. And so, yep, he wasn't able to meet the original timeline. You know, I would just, in response to Commissioner Elliott, the way the Richfield Rediscovered program has typically worked is that you need to come with a buyer and a builder. Mr. Anders has done so many homes with us over the past few years that we have gotten to the point where we have sold him the lot without a buyer because of his track record. And so we've been comfortable with that, and he's always had a buyer by the time the house was built. And so we have had that comfort level with him, but if you don't have it in this case, you know, we can certainly be firm about that.
I believe if you look at the original contract, it says he will have 5 purchase agreements signed.
Okay, I can go back and look.
So we removed, and it's not lack for trusting him, but this is a little bit bitter, and the lots may or may not be as attractive as the other lots he's built on already. So I understand what you're saying, and there was a trust factor, but that was specifically in the first contract.
So you want him to have 4 buyers before?
Well, we wanted it was going to be 5, so I would
Okay,
expect the
yep,
same
we
at
can
4.
be consistent, yep.
Are there other questions, Commissioner Sandal?
A comment, and that is that my concern in not making a decision this evening may mean that the work can't be done and that the whole project will be delayed. And I actually, and I know there's an additional $60,000 that the city might be on the hook for. But we do and have in the past, part of what our goal is in the city, we have bought housing and lots with the idea that we would mark down the lots so that we could have the housing built, so that we could actually go forward with building the housing that Richfield needs. And so I'm concerned about the delay. I'm not quite sure if we don't approve it today, and I'm okay with the $60,000 being a potential additional cost to the city. I think what we will have is 4 very nice homes that will produce taxes that will get this property off the city's tax roll and onto or rather not tax roll, and provide income and places for people to live. So, and I have dealt with Mr. Endres both personally as well as with the city things, and I tend to agree. I think he does a good job, and I'm not concerned about him finding buyers. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm concerned about the delay. And the other thing is, if we're looking at doing the roads next summer, we certainly want them all done at the same time. Having personally now lived with Lyndale Avenue on my front of my office building since April, we don't want to have to do this twice.
Yes, and I have talked to the Public Works Director, and, she is open to messing with the schedule, basically, but it's not our preferred option.
Yeah.
So I mean, she was willing to try to be flexible. I don't know what's involved with that, but that is something that she suggested could happen. There could be some flexibility, but it's the ideal is to stick with the regular schedule and to work with that.
And just looking at the homes, which is, we have, I don't know if you people have seen it, we have a diagram of the 4 homes versus the previous 5 homes on the site.
Can we put that up on the screen so that others can see it?
Right, no, that's a cutoff one. Oh, yep, you can. I printed it wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Let me look with you.
Yeah, we can look on there.
When we discussed this last time around, we went with the 5 homes because we obviously had a $0 additional cost.
Right.
This is going to have a potentially $60,000 additional cost. But in terms of the actual size of the properties, I have to take my glasses off to see this. If I look at it, I should hit my screen so I can see what people are seeing. There we go. Obviously, the 4 is on the left and the 5 lots on the right. And when you read the dimensions, which I can't read on the screen, the starting at the top left, the pink one, that one was previously 5,600 square feet. It is now a much bigger lot size. It's 8,280 square feet. The green lot to the right was in the past 5,920 square feet. It is now 7,950 square feet. And then we have the blue lot, which previously was 6,400 square feet and is now 7,100 square feet. And the last one is the yellow one. Again, an extra 1,000 square feet. So all of the lots have gotten bigger.
I would say one point of clarification is these two are not, one is not what was originally proposed, correct?
No, no.
Right.
These are with, these are with the current survey.
This is
data.
what was originally proposed. These are actually not front to back differences of what had been proposed.
Okay, well, I can't see.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I found the old one, as you looked, the three lots together were 45, 45, and 50.
Mm-hmm.
And now with three, it would be 43, 44, 48. Am I reading that right?
I believe that when the survey was corrected, the lots all got smaller, and they
Okay,
would have
all right.
required each of them to have a waiver, or I
Okay,
don't know the
that's
technical
helpful. I did
term.
not understand that.
So
Uh,
the ones that Mr. Stark has on the screen now is with the correct survey, what would happen to them.
Okay.
So, we have some other questions, but I just wanted to make sure you had finished.
Yeah. I have more things we can talk, but I'm sure the neighbors would like to speak too.
Right, and I wanted to clarify some things on the timing, and I know Mr. Andrus and the neighbors both wanted to speak. So at this point, can you clarify some of the things with the timing? For instance, what would happen if we come back and the appraiser says this isn't going to work? Or, so can you tell us what all the different scenarios could be if the appraisal comes back and it says it's not going to work? What happens?
So if it comes back saying that really the lots are worth 60,000, which Mr. Andrus originally suggests that's their worth, and that really 350, 360 is the most you can expect for the house, that's when we would need to talk about that additional subsidy. That's when we'd have to consider that. So we're saying that that is a very real possibility. If the appraisal comes back and he says, you know, given this market, I would feel confident these lots are worth a little bit more, the house is worth a little bit more, that number, 60,000, goes down.
So you're saying you don't think it's ever going to go above the 60,000?
Right.
Okay, so the question is whether or not we're going to be on the hook for the 60,000 or not.
60,000 or less, yeah.
Okay, so, and when you're expecting the appraisal to come back by late October?
Yeah, he's working on it. He has called and gotten information from us, so he's in process.
All right, so then getting into the whole public works deal with the mill and the overlay. If this all gets delayed by waiting for the appraisal, what happens? Did I understand you to say that it's feasible to switch the schedule? Because I do not want to see us having to rip things up twice.
No, we would talk to Kristen and work out a arrangement that we would have to change the schedule. I don't have details on that. It's just something that she said she could consider and take a look at.
Because the concern would be that we need to make a decision one way or the other, because we don't want to be doing this and then 2 years down the road ripping everything up, or vice versa.
Well, or he has to do more of the work, you know. Mr. Andrus has to do it. It's not just a patch, but he has to, you know, completely do the road himself. So there are some options.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we understood what the timelines were, and I wanted to follow up on Commissioner Elliott's question and also your question about the roads. Are there any other questions from commissioners?
If I may,
Go ahead.
just in regards to when we passed it at 5, that it was a zero-sum game. It wasn't. We were given the entire plot away for $1. And I think the most recent appraisal we had was worth $333,000. So from my perspective, we pass this, move forward, and if it's 60,000, what we've got is $393,000 into the game, and that's not acceptable to me.
Okay. So at this point, I think we've had requests from the neighbors if they would wanted to speak, and I know Mr. Andrus that also would like to speak. So we're gonna kind of do it in the similar vein to how a public hearing would be. So you'd get 3 minutes and you'd identify yourself and give your address and that kind of stuff. So is there someone wishing to speak? Well, at this point, since we have all the stuff up on the screen, if you want to explain what's on the screen, the developer could go and then you guys could respond. So, Mr. Endress, if you want to come forward, because you had said you wanted to explain. And then, do we want to have that on the screen while he's explaining?
Yeah, it's still up there. Yeah.
Oh,
there we
it's
go.
still there. Okay.
Which one is out there? This one?
Yes.
Why is mine fuzzy? Oh, that's much better. Thank you.
All right. Can you identify yourself for the record, please?
My name's Dustin Endress, Endress Custom Homes.
There we go.
Whoa.
I didn't know it went that far away.
There we go. Thank you. Oop, fuzzy. There we go.
All right. So go ahead. We'll give you 3 minutes to explain how it works.
Okay, if the neighbors are all gonna talk and get 3 minutes each, could you give me a little bit more time?
Well,
So, because
Well, if
I
he's the
have a lot
developer,
of
yes.
things
okay.
to just
So at
explain.
this point, why
So
don't
you-
you just go ahead and start talking
Yeah.
and see how far we get, and if we have questions,
Sure.
we may go
Just
on.
so you understand what is going on here. Okay, here's the original plan. It might be kind of hard to see on here, but the survey that you guys had was incorrect, and we didn't find this out till our surveyor actually went out there, found corners and everything like that, and then did all of his work, right? The GIS kind of shows what is correct. There's a yellow line through here, right through here. There's a line right through our road where we were planning to put that road. That is essentially where the correct survey line is, so you can see how that kind of cut us off there. And one thing that we discussed was to get that land from MnDOT, and which would work, it would be fine, but it would take time, and it's just kind of who knows when it would happen. So the easiest thing that we just came to the conclusion of was just to work with what we have. And so that was, so it doesn't mean that 5 won't work. If we do the 5, we'll still, just one thing I needed to clarify on the staff report is that we wouldn't need to have any narrower of a road. It would still be 26 feet. We might need a little bit of a clip here on this turnaround, which should be fine with fire because they have everything they need except for that little clip, and that should be fine. So with the 5 lots, we're still at 6,400 square feet on these 3, which is the minimum. We're just short on the lot square footage on these 2. And then the widths here, they're all under on the width. 50 foot is the minimum width. We're at 43, 44, 48, 47, and 45 or so. So in my opinion, it's not much of a variance request, but that's just me. It's your land. I don't care what you choose, 4 lots or 5. I really don't care. So it like the staff said, it does come down to an economical decision versus the land decision. So I guess that's the decision you have to make. But when you compare these 2 side by side, you're really not gaining much by going to 4 lots, in my opinion. You're just giving these guys a super long backyard over here, and we're losing a lot down here. The road becomes about 35 feet shorter. That's about it. So it really doesn't put a dent in the cost. So in regards to setbacks, side yard setbacks, we meet all the side yard setbacks in all of them. Front yard setbacks, we meet all that as well. Your minimum side yard setbacks are 5 feet on each side yard, so 10 feet total to each building, and we're at 15 on the 5 lot versus 20 on the 4 lot. So either way, we meet all those setbacks. So, and then just a couple things to clarify here. We're looking to maintain the affordability of these, and from buyers that I've talked to that would want to build over here, that is the biggest thing. And an email that I sent to Julie of one of the buyers that I have for these is that if the cost got jacked up another 15 grand, then they would rather have a smaller lot than pay an extra $15,000 for a larger one. So that's just a buyer perspective to think about, in addition to your economical perspective of weighing the cost of this, doing the 4 lots and chipping in some money for it. We have $12,000 into this already in surveying and engineering because we didn't find out about the error till we were into it, So it does we do want to keep moving forward with either the 5 lot or the 4 lot. And it has been over a year of this back and forth and trying to get this figured out. So yeah, it would be nice to just nail it down and get done. The sewer and water is what we want to get done this year, if anything at a bare minimum, because we got to come all the way from the cul-de-sac and run all the way up in there. And so that would be much easier to do in the fall. And then just in case we run into a problem or something, then we've got that work done already. So, that's basically it. And as far as buyers go, yeah, I haven't marketed this to anybody except for people that I just know on my list, because there's just really, there's nothing much to say if I can't really, I can't market something publicly if I don't even know what to market, So, and I don't want people to sit and wait all the time, because I did have 2 buyers on these before, but they got tired of waiting. Right now I have 1, and I do have other people interested, but it's nothing that anyone wants to commit to if they don't know what it'll be. So,
Okay, so thank you for that.
Okay.
That was helpful to know. So in your mind, it doesn't matter to you if it's 4 or 5.
no, I just think it's a better deal for the city to go with the 5. I think that even, I don't know if any of you are on the planning commission, but the variances are negligible to me. I mean, I don't see them as being a problem or anything that hasn't been done in the past in the city. I know that it's a quantity of 5 or 3, however you look at it, wherever the variances are needed, but I would much rather go that route, maintain your tax revenue, and maintain the cost that you have into the property already, just for a little bit of variance. I mean, otherwise you can look at doing a PUV, plan unit development, and we go that route and we get to the same ends, where you approve a PUD to circumvent the variances. So, but you're getting to the same thing, so.
All right, are there other questions from commissioners for Mr. Endres before we move to the neighborhood comment?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
If that's okay.
Can you step up to the microphone though, so that it's on the record? No, I think it's good to get clarity, but please step up to the microphone and identify yourself so that we can get you
I'm
on
Jerry
record.
Scott, and I live on 6608 Emerson Avenue South. I was just curious. You say you had 2 buyers for these properties? Okay. I just want to know, did you take them to the area where they saw the area where the homes were being built? Okay. And he has been back there too? And they know that the freeway is there and the airport's there, and they're okay with that.
All right.
And
All right. So I think we've answered the question.
Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Endres. And at this point, we're just going to, if there are a couple of people that want to get up and say something, you ask for a chance to speak. So Mr. Powell, if you want to go for it.
Good evening. My name is John Powell. I'm at 6800 Emerson Lane. The additional survey work that was completed in August of 2019 The question is, why did it take until mid-October to determine that the current deadline of December 31st of 2019 would not be attainable? A deadline was set for a reason and should be followed. Who paid for the survey work that has occurred thus far? Who is responsible for paying the additional survey work that's being done? If this is falling on the city of Richfield or the HRA paying for this, what's the total cost of that survey work? We'd like to know what those figures are. In April, in the April work session, policymakers determined that either 2 or 5 homes would be appropriate and fiscally responsible uses given the HRA's financial investment in this property. How does this deviation from the 5 to 4 homes support what the HRA deemed as being appropriate and fiscally responsible from that April work session? The housing specialist and executive director were very adamant that this project will only work with the 5 houses. Okay? The $60,000 subsidy that's being requested to offset the development costs of the site, who sincerely feels that throwing in additional taxpayers' money at this sinking ship is appropriate and fiscally responsible, means proceeding forward? Why is this additional $60,000 not being required to be an expense for the private business? The builder/business is a for-profit entity. Either the numbers work for the private entity or they do not work. We as taxpayers and city should not be expected to shoulder these additional costs and continue throwing good money at a bad decision that was made by past members, not yourselves, past members of the HRA and City Council in August of 2005 when they decided to purchase this lot for $275,000. How does we did see the configuration. We were not privy to that information or did not see that come through as far as how the change in the 4 to 5 homes was going to be laid out. It is nice to see that the lot sizes are bigger, as is with the rest of the neighborhood. The 36 houses that are on Emerson Avenue and Emerson Lane, taking an average of all of those property sizes, those parcels are all 1/4 acre parcels. So to see that these lot sizes in the 4-home plan being larger is a positive step in the right direction. As neighbors, though, we do strongly oppose variances, the variances that are being requested in the staff report number 35 that's sitting in front of you here this evening. We're requesting, we saw the new revised site plans, and we'd like to be able to see, I guess the home sites actually platted out to be able to see what those look like on the lot itself. Going back to the property taxes, to add some clarity to the misinformed presentation that was from July's meeting of how long it would take to recoup the loss that the city of Richfield would have if it went down the path of developing the 4 homes. We look at the taxable market value that Richfield homes valued anywhere from $315,000 to $392,220 that have been stated publicly on the Hennepin County's tax records. After speaking with Joan Slavin, who's the supervisor of the Hennepin County Accounting Department, she was able to provide an accurate percentage of the annual property taxes that are received by the city of Richfield, which is 34% of the total annual property taxes for each home.
Okay, hold on for a second. Are other people going to speak? If you're the only person, I'll let you finish up. But if we're going to have a whole bunch of people, then
I can speak
do you want to just That's fine. I just was trying to get a sense of timing,
Sure.
so that if there's 1 or 2, that's different than if there's 15 people that want to speak. So since we gave the developer an extra minute or 2, you can go ahead and finish out your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Supple. I won't go through all 3 of these, but starting with the $315,000 taxable value, you can see the breakdown. Going to letter D at the $392,220 taxable value provides a $5,715 annual property tax. Breaking that down and taking off the 34% that the city of Richfield would actually take on, or would actually take as an annual basis, you're getting the $1,943.10. So in between those 3, $315,000, the letter C, the $342,000, and letter D, the $392,000 taxable value, giving the city the benefit of the doubt, going with the highest value of these examples, which was the $7,772.40 in annual property tax received. Dividing that figure into the $330,000 that was stated on the report that you have here tonight, I know that the cost, it sounds like maybe is higher than that. But dividing that figure into the $330,000 that the HRA currently has into this property, you get 42 and a half years for your ROI, which is your return on investment. This is not even close to the 10 to 12 years payoff that Ms. Sandel had previously stated. What exact figures are being used to calculate the city's return on this investment for the project? We as taxpaying citizens would request that those figures be made public. The members of the HRA and City Council need to continue making informed decisions based on accurate information. Going forward, we as neighbors do appreciate the continued advance written notice of any and all discussions that are and considerations of the members of the HRA and City Council pertaining to this piece of property. Thank you.
Okay. Since we just received this tonight, I realize we can't have answers to all of these. I do think it was good that advanced notice was given to the neighborhood, so thank you for doing that. I believe we've dealt with the part about if their purchase agreements have been signed. That was already answered. We've seen the 4 or 5 homes. So, Executive Director Stark, are there a couple of other things you can fill us in on that were asked here?
I'm not I don't really have specific answers to this. As you said, we just saw it. I just wanted to go back to, my opening statement. The baseline we're at now is you have approved 5. The reason we came with our recommendation for 4, like I said, is a large part of that is the land use hat that we also wear, and knowing that in that other role, we're going to be taking this to the Planning Commission and the City Council, or just the City Council, sorry. A small piece of that, though, was a presumption on our part, or on my part at least, which may or may not have been correct. My presumption, based on having had a couple of work sessions with the neighborhood, is that the neighborhood would have preferred a fewer number of homes. You've approved 5. My presumption was the neighborhood would have preferred 4 over 5. And so, as I said, that seeing the turnout we're seeing tonight, and maybe some of the comments, that may have not been an accurate presumption.
Okay, are there other follow-up questions? So my understanding on the survey work that Mr. Andrus has paid for the survey work?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's coming out of his pocket. All right, is there someone else that wanted to speak? I saw a couple hands. So go ahead. And please state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Sarah Whitty. I live on Emerson Avenue, obviously, or I wouldn't be here. A few of my primary questions were answered concerning what we know about the homes, if they're going to change. I assume the design of the homes won't change. That's unfortunate. So we'll have the same design of homes. My first question is, if the developer is stating that he would prefer 5, and we don't actually have the information about proceeding with 4, why are we here? I mean, I think that we don't really have much information because we don't know what we're doing. What is the likelihood of the variance being granted? That's a question, not a statement.
So with 4 homes, there are no exceptions to the subdivision ordinance. It meets all the rules of the subdivision, so there's no variance.
I understand that,
Yep.
but he has stated that he would prefer to do 5.
So if he did 5,
Yes.
it would go before the council. They would have to make a determination.
And
Okay.
There's no way of us knowing.
I don't know
They
what
can't
that decision
share
would be.
Okay.
their
We-
votes ahead of time.
We feel
All
as staff that when you get to that number of exceptions, that
Right.
we had to look at other options.
Okay. So that was one of my first questions. As a statement, the idea of proposing that you begin any sort of development without actually knowing the numbers and the results is, as someone pointed out, why begin doing work if you'll have to redo it? So what I would suggest, and I think the neighbors would agree, if we could come up with a proposal that would actually state what is going to happen, and then move forward with actual information, because from what I understand, you don't actually know there's a rough estimate for the projected costs, but we don't actually know what they are as of yet. Wouldn't it be better to decide whether we're doing 4 or 5, and then actually have the costs in hand before we begin work? Although I understand it's to the benefit of probably the city and the builder to begin, so we can get to the point where he's actually finding buyers for these homes. And I understand there's one as of right now, but that's dependent on that. It wasn't clear to me whether that's dependent on the 4-house plan or the 5-house plan. What would that look like if we actually had all the information we needed to know what was going to happen before something was actually done? Is there a projected kind of timeline of how long it would take to have an understanding of what the actual costs will be?
Okay, so thank you. So it sounds like you said the end of October we would have appraisal numbers.
Correct, yes.
All right,
Excellent.
Thank you.
So then would we just reconvene and have another discussion about this?
It's my
Or would you?
understanding we make a decision tonight, and we can either decide to move forward or decide to wait, and that will impact when work can be done. Is that correct?
Correct. We offered, so our recommendation was go ahead and approve it. We'll confirm the numbers when they come in and report back. The other options we offered were you could delay till November, till the numbers are in, and then you can make your decision. You could make some other sort of arrangement beyond that. So we gave, there are several alternate recommendations that you can consider. Or you can say no and let it proceed with 5 lots.
So if we say no, it just proceeds with the 5 lots and
With
there's
5.
no changes.
Right, and then it will likely go before the council in late November or early December with plat.
So as I see it, there are 3 options. We can say no, and it proceeds with the original plan.
Yes.
We could postpone this for a decision till November when we have the numbers,
Yes.
or we could go forward with the plan that's proposed here with a maximum subsidy of an additional 60,000. Is that correct? Those are the 3 options.
Thank you. That was much clearer. Thank
Yes,
you.
that is much clearer. Thank you.
All right.
That's
all right.
helpful.
Thank you. And I think there was one more gentleman that wanted to say something. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Pax, and I live adjacent to this property. And I just want to reemphasize something. As a former realtor in the field years ago, I think this return on investment, and especially of this Sandal that apparently you talked about, I wasn't there apparently when that happened, but to be talking about a 10-year return, and of course we've got numbers here that show it's a lot longer than that. And I would especially be interested to see. As a neighbor and a citizen and taxpayer for over almost 40 years in Richfield, I really would like to see how you are calculating the figures that you're getting if you're getting a 10-year return on your investment here. I don't understand that at all. So to me, that is a very important thing in all of these kinds of considerations, and it oftentimes is discounted. And I think that that's why I'm here to emphasize it. That's all I want to add.
Chair Supple,
All right, thank you.
if I could.
Go ahead.
So the return on investment, when we had a work session, Commissioner Sandal talked about the return to all of the taxpayers or all the taxing jurisdictions, including the county, including the school district. That's where the 10 to 12 years came in, and that's accurate. As Mr. Powell mentioned, the city only gets 34% of all of taxes, and so the city gets 1/3 of the taxes. So if it's a 12-year return for the entirety of the taxing bodies,
Yeah.
and we only get 1/3 of it, then it's 3 times that long for only our piece, or 36 years, which is similar, closer to what we're talking about. I believe in the staff report, back in those work sessions, we were talking about a return on investment of in the neighborhood of 30 plus years. One thing to remember about the return on investment discussion, though, is the majority of the investment was made 15 years ago, and we'll never get that back. If we do nothing, then it's a $300,000 loss. Right. And so it's, if I could get in my 1985 DeLorean and go back to when we purchased this property, I don't know that I would have recommended purchasing it. We've learned a lot about this property. We unfortunately learned that the survey was wrong, but that's not a choice available to us. And so we're trying to make the best of the situation in which the HRA does own a property. Selling it for any amount of money will be a step in the right direction.
So based on that, I have a follow-up question, because I think this is a really very important thing to consider more deeply about ROI. If the Nature Center, as I understand it, they were offered this, Wood Lake Nature, and they turned it down. If they had accepted it, how would you be calculating an ROI on that situation?
The ROI in that situation would not be financial. It would be environmental. It would be we wouldn't be selling it to Wood Lake. So it would be a complete loss of the money that had been spent from a financial standpoint. From other standpoints, there would be gains to the community.
All right. Thank you, sir. As we've got one other speaker, and then we'll need to make our decision. So, I thought the lady in red wanted to, and then you had a question? Well, well, if she doesn't use the full time, we can.
Yeah, mine will be shorted. So I'm Jody Powell on 6800 Emerson Lane. I have a couple questions. And if we have one legitimate purchase agreement signed currently, and the previous agreement that was decided in July was that he would the builder would have until the end of the year, what can be done right now to the land? Because we talked about not wanting to delay the project and delay the work, but right now, without the purchase agreement signed, we can't do anything anyway, can we? Or the builder?
I do not know the answer to that question. Do we?
It had a December 31st deadline, right? So he'd have to get everything done by that time.
If we stick with the original agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, I might not ask the question correct. So, previously we agreed, I think it was in July, to the current plan that was voted on and signed off on. So everyone went on the assumption that the previous assessment was correct. And that's what we had for information at the time. If we just found out, I'm guessing very recently, I don't have a date, that it wasn't correct, what would they have done, what would the builder have done differently? I feel like we had about 6 months to market the property, to get the purchase agreement signed. We're now sitting at the end of October, a little over 2 months left, with one purchase agreement out of what was supposed to be 5. And now we're talking about extensions and things like that, which I get that things have changed, but it also seems strange that we had 3 to 4 months to get this far before we found this out. We have one purchase agreement. Now we found this. Now we're going to add an 8-month extension.
So that's probably not something we can, that's speculation. So at that point, you've raised the point, but we probably can't answer that.
Okay, my apologies then. Yeah, I'll be done.
All
in
right,
April
so
1st.
that leaves you about a minute if you want to ask your question. And please state your name, thank you.
Sure, yeah. I'm April Preem. I'm at 6639 Emerson. And I recently invested in my property. I see the value in my neighborhood, and I put a rather large addition on and was limited in what I could do based on our ordinances. And when I talked to the, not the planners, but the inspectors and that, and I said, well, is there any way we could go bigger, or could we extend out this way? And they pretty much told me that it's not even worth trying. The ordinances are what they are. You have to build to them. And I don't know if the rules for the additions are different than it is for subdivided land, but if as a homeowner, my chances of being granted a variance are nil, it seems odd that the city, to benefit itself, can just be granted several variances. That doesn't seem fair, and now my addition's built, I can't use that one to my advantage, but I just wanted to share that I feel pretty passionate about those variances.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much, and thank you for all the comments. Well, let's just hold off at this point. I think we've kind of had a lot of people give things. I would like to hear from the commissioners, their thoughts on the matter. So,
I actually would like to hear Mr. Endres. I think I heard him say he'd prefer 5. I'm not sure exactly what the residents want, assuming that something is going to be built there. My assumption was the same as staff's, that they would probably prefer 4, but I don't know that, so.
okay. So Commissioner Sandel has
But
asked
but
to
no
hear.
money. You don't want any money to change hands, and they've told us it's a potential.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So let's not get into a back and forth here. You asked for Mr. Endres to make one more statement, and then we'll,
Comment on the
variances?
The variances,
All right, so go ahead.
and what his preference is.
Okay, regarding the variances you were asking for are encroachment variances. So you're encroaching into the side yard, of which they don't want you to do. You would be asking to either encroach into the side yard setback or encroach into the rear yard setback. Neither of those are which we're doing.
All right, so at this
Yep.
point, let's just answer the question because
But
we can't get
none of
into
our
an
variances
argument
are encroachment variances. They're just lot size variances. That's all.
here. So what you're saying is the lot size would be different, but the space between the houses would be the same.
Yeah, for instance, in the 5-lot scenario, we have, say, an average of, well, it is 15 feet between 2 houses, right? On the 5-lot scenario. In the 4-lot scenario, we're at 20 feet between 2 houses. The minimum is 10 feet, so we exceed that easily in either scenario. And it's just the lot width that we're dealing with. Your minimum's 50, and we're down to 43 on one of them. And it's from there and up that where we have our lot widths. And then it's the square footage on 2 of them, but 3 conform to the 6,400. So, but in nowhere in any of our scenarios are we asking for a variance to encroach on any of their lots or any of our own lots, or what would be, to get any houses closer to each other than what the current ordinances would allow,
All right,
if that
thank
makes
you
sense.
for clarifying that.
Okay.
Are there
Miss-
other comments from
Sure.
HRH members? Or
Maybe
do
I
you
can
wanna- Yeah, go ahead.
put a finer point on that. You know, I think somebody had asked me, or it came up somewhere, you know, whether the council would or would not grant the variances that would be necessary for 5 lots, and my answer was, I can't tell you. And that's the fact.
We don't
It's,
know.
you're taking your chance. And I don't know what the inspectors told Ms. Preen, but that really should be their answer is, you can seek a variance and you're taking a chance, and we can't tell you what the outcome will or won't be. And that's really the answer. And I will talk to our inspectors and make sure they're telling people that answer. They shouldn't be telling somebody not to seek a variance. They should just tell them there are risks involved in doing it, and there's a time lag involved in doing it. And that's exactly what I would tell Mr. Andrus.
All right, thank you for that clarification. All right, Commissioner Freeze Daniels?
Yes, I would just reiterate what Executive Director Stark said. In my limited time in the Planning Commission, we did approve and not approve many homeowner requests. So thank you for addressing that as well. As far as this goes, I think I am not interested in amending the contract at all is where my head's at. I think adding additional funds to this, I'm not interested in doing that. I think the timeline we were given, we were pretty clear. I wasn't loving this in the first place, and so that's kind of where I stand right now. Is I would vote to not amend the contract whatsoever.
Okay. Commissioner Elliott?
That's what I said before. I'd vote to table it until we know what the appraisal comes back at.
So that's slightly differently from a parliamentary standpoint. If you postpone the decision till next month, then it'll be decided. If you vote it straight down, then it goes on as it was in the original agreement. So that's two different outcomes, if I'm correct. Mr. Stark, is that accurate?
And so we're adding some new kind of permutations into what the possibilities are. I would say in any event, even in the event of continuing with 5 houses, my recommendation would be to extend the time, all of the time limits in the development agreement by at least 3 months. And the reason for that is there's been a 3-month delay due to this finding out that the survey was wrong. That was not a delay of the builders making. Again, that's a recommendation that you could do with what you will.
All right. Did you want to respond to
Yeah,
that?
I would just say,
Since
like,
that's new information.
My reasoning for not wanting to extend it is at max it's 60, which is more than I'm willing to spend additional on this property. And if it's smaller than that and comes back as a insignificant amount, then I think we also shouldn't be paying an insignificant amount. And can that be absorbed by the builder? If that makes any sense.
I'm going to move something and we'll see if it flies.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm going to move that the only amendment we make, that we don't accept the 4-house amendment, which is I think what this is, and that we move to extend the deadline by the 3 months due to that it wasn't the developer's fault, that there was a problem with the survey. He believed what the city told him and it turned out not to be accurate. City didn't know either. And I would extend it from, was it December 31st to March? Would that be 3 months? March? January, February, March? To March 31st, 2020.
All right. I'll second that for purposes of discussion. So if that is the case, the appraisal would also be back before that point, and we would know exactly how much. Or right now, you're just saying it's 5 houses and
I'm
the
leaving
rest
it
of
at
it's all-
5 and extending it 3 months. And I suppose the
appraisal becomes irrelevant.
well, you can always, I suppose you can change your mind, can we?
Well, it has to then, in theory, then he would proceed with 5 lots
And
to
5
to the
purchase
council.
agreements,
If the
yeah.
council were to say no,
Yeah.
then would you want it to see it back here with 4, with the appraisal numbers? It sounds like Commissioner Reese-Daniels is no.
So can you clarify the timelines then? If this motion were to pass, then would it proceed to the council next month?
If Mr. Enders decides to proceed with
If
5.
he decides to proceed with 5, okay.
If this motion were to pass as is, I think one of the things I'm hearing is that $60,000 isn't going to garner the vote tonight. And so if the motion that is up for debate were to be passed, and we found out some information next month, as we said, we're talking about up to 60,000. So let's say we get the appraisal that comes in and we look at the numbers and say, well, we talked to the HRA about up to $60,000. Really, the number is going to be X, whatever that is. You know, I'm going to have to make an informed decision about whether I want to bring that back to you in November or December. I may say, well, whatever that number X is so close to 60, I know where they're at. And so we'll proceed with 5. If it comes back and it's a minimal number, it might, my calculation might be different, and I might say, let's go talk to the HRA about this again.
I would have to say that I think the number would make a difference for me because we already have over 300,000 in sunk costs. So it's a question of how much we want to invest in order to get housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that number would make a difference for me. I do think in fairness that I would probably support an extension from the standpoint of that it did get delayed and it wasn't the fault of the developer. It was a bad survey from back a ways. And that would allow us to have time for appraisals. Who pays for the appraisals, by the way? Is that something that we're paying for?
Paying for, we want it to be our number.
Okay. Other thoughts on the motion?
I was okay with 60 because I think the city has invested a lot of money already in this property, and I'd like to see it turn into housing. So less would be better, of course.
All right, so another question. If it ends up being a 2-2 vote, does that mean that it just stays status quo the way it is?
My recollection is a 2-2 vote would mean it fails.
All right. Are there other questions? All right, so we have a motion before us, and I think at this point, for clarity, we probably should do a roll call vote on it, just so that it's very clear. So, Mr. Elliott, yes or no?
The only reason I'm going to vote yes is because it gives the time for the appraisal to come in and to satisfy my dispute on whether or not I want to contribute an additional $60,000 to this. So that if, like John said, you were worried about it maybe squeezing into November. So if we go with the additional 90 days that Commissioner Sandall added, the appraisal will be back. We'll have more information, and I think that that's absolutely necessary to make the right decision in this. So I think with the understanding that what we're doing is defeating a 3-1 vote or a 4-0 vote will defeat the proposal that's before us in regards to the 4 houses, or the amendment, and we'll revert back to the original with an additional 90 days added to the timelines. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That understanding, I'd vote yes.
Okay, so that's that vote. Commissioner Vreese Daniels?
No.
All right, Commissioner Sandall?
I'm voting yes.
All right, and I guess I would vote yes at this point just to get the more information back. So at this point, just to clarify, we have extended the deadline, but it's the original proposal and nothing else has changed, and we will have more numbers. And it will then be proceeding forward through the procedure as stated. All right, thank you. And thank you all for your time. We're going to move on then to, let's see. Consider an amendment to the contract for private development with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity for 6310 Irving Avenue South to allow reimbursement for abatement of contaminated soil. Mr. Stark?
Thank you, Chair Supple. I am going to again ask Housing Manager Urban to provide the staff report for this item.
Chair Supple, members of the Commission. Back on May 20th, 2019, the HRA approved a contract for private development with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity for the development of a single-family home at 6310 Irving Avenue South. The property is being developed under the HRA's new home program and will be sold to an income-qualified buyer. The property was sold to Habitat for $1 in exchange for the construction of a new public alley that will serve both this property and 2 adjacent homes. The existing unpaved alley did not meet current city construction standards. During site preparations by Habitat back in August, Habitat discovered a large amount of asbestos siding in the soil that needed to be removed. While hazardous materials from the house itself had been abated by the HRA, these shakes were found in the soil in an area not included in the abatement. This was likely from a re-siding that occurred probably well back into the mid-1900s, back when apparently it was what you did, maybe, buried stuff that you didn't want to deal with. So the shakes did not match the current shakes on the home, so they were obviously from a previous siding. The cost of the removal of the material was approximately $30,000. We would like to point out that had the contaminated soil been found at the time of our hazardous materials survey, we would have paid for the cost. That accompanied with the fact that there were extraordinary costs for the alley already covered by Habitat. They are asking if we would help pay for that abatement. So we are recommending as staff that we do what we consider the right thing and help them with the cost of abatement.
Chair Supple, I would just add that Commissioner Reese Daniels asked a question that I'll provide the rest of you the answer to. And that question was whether this was an eligible use for our Housing and Redevelopment Fund. If you remember, during the budget discussions, we talked about the possibility that in years to come, there might be excess funds left over in that we would have to send back to the county if we didn't find an eligible use for it. This would be an eligible use for those funds.
Would be an eligible?
Yes, it would be an eligible use.
Okay, it was kind of hard to tell the
Good
difference
use.
between those two, so it'd be a good,
Yes, we can
an
use it.
eligible good use. All right. Did someone want to?
I'll move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I would say that without knowing that there were extra funds that we would have to give back, I probably would not be so in favor of this. I think it's part of the risk of doing business, much as like our previous one. But since we would have excess funds that could be used for this, I'm in support of it. So
So
just wanted to be clear about that.
to clarify for the viewing audience out there, the funds that this would come out of would otherwise have to be returned. So we wouldn't be able to use it for housing in Ridgefield, is your point? Okay.
Thank you.
Great idea. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
I just want to say that my firm has represented the manufacturer that made those asbestos shingles. And don't shame me for that. They pay me to do that job. So I'm not familiar, other than raw asbestos that's too close to talc, that it leaches through the earth or would remain a contaminant, but you don't want it there nonetheless, I can guarantee you.
All right, any other comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, so we've passed that amendment.
May I suggest that you monitor Commissioner Reese Daniels? She is shaming me on the dais here.
Oh, okay. Well, so we're going to be respectful of all present. Thank you.
Noted.
All right. Number 5, consider the approval of a resolution accepting contributions to the 2019 Tour of Remodeled Homes. Mr. Stark.
Thank you. The Community Development Department solicited financial sponsorship for the 2019 renovation celebration Tour of Remodeled Homes. 5 sponsors donated $200 each to sponsor the tour. The funds were used to provide gift cards to participating homeowners and for marketing expenses. State law requires the HRA to accept these funds by resolution. I would note that typically this would be a consent calendar item, but I wanted to take it off consent to specifically name the local businesses that provided the funds, and they are Builders by Design, the Center for Energy and Environment, E.J. Hansen, architect, Socorro Design Build, and Steve Schneeberger of Keller Williams Realty. And so we're thankful for their generosity.
All right.
Thank you. I'll move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any further comments?
I would applaud Mr. Starks for bringing their names to our attention and publishing. That was nice.
Yes, and it was a great tour. It was very, very awesome.
I was gonna say I was out of town and missed it, but it's great to see the high numbers of people who attended. And I know we took a break the year before, so hopefully we can keep doing it for next year.
Well, and the weather was not very nice. So
Always raining.
It was, although it was misting, so we were okay. But
still, that's a lot of people if you have 350 people that went through in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
watching the weather forecast was like, oh, how much did we invest for a rainy day? And it
Yeah.
turned out great. So yes, our goal is to have it every year. We just need willing folks. It's a lot to have 350 people through your house.
In their wet, muddy boots. And yes.
The house where I was at, they were clear extroverts, and they were still exhausted at the end of the day. So it's exhausting. It's a lot. They were very generous and very kind.
All right, thank you. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved that resolution. So that brings us to HRA discussion items. Are there any items anyone would like to discuss? All right, then the executive director's report.
I do not have a report for you tonight, Madam Chair, but I'd be happy to answer any questions people have.
All right,
I have a question.
all right, go for it.
I didn't see any minutes in the agenda, and I didn't see any minutes when I printed out my packet. But I know you listed 4 of them.
They were
in there.
in mine that I saw when we were emailed attachments. It was part of the whole packet.
Okay. I think I went on just the general website and printed it off, and I did not spot them.
But I will tell you that, we're kind of going through, we're figuring out staff roles and responsibilities to staffing the HRA. So as things like this come up, continue to let us know. And so we will make sure we try to get you the information in a way that's useful to you.
Do you see it on the agenda, the minutes? Approval of the minutes?
It was on the one that I downloaded at home off my email. So
They're
It's
on
not
the
one you're
computer,
looking
too.
at.
it says approval of minutes, but
It wasn't on the printed agenda.
Yeah, it is.
Where?
Well, they're on the
You have to
computer. I printed
scroll
out and I
through.
got them too.
you just have to scroll through. Oh,
On the
yours.
short agenda.
Yeah, this one, it's on this one that I printed out from home.
Okay.
So I don't know why they don't show up on yours, because they're on this one.
When I go online, it's got the agenda and then the full agenda. So if I just want the agenda and I don't want all the extra paperwork, I don't get it. I just get the agenda.
Oh, I get what you mean.
Get 2 entries.
Okay. Well,
I
I'll check it out
printed
next
this
time.
off of the full agenda. I just printed the first 2 pages of it, so that must be the shorthand one. I
Yeah.
did have,
And I would note, we don't see what you get, and so we're going to work on making sure that what you get, we see, because I wouldn't even know how to respond to that because I don't see exactly what you get.
one thing that would also be helpful is in the past, you had emailed us the claims and payroll ahead of time, and so we wouldn't have to sit here and scramble and look through it in the meeting. So I don't remember seeing that today, so if we could go back to that practice, that would be helpful as well.
We will do that.
All right, thank you, because, we had the hard copies here and we looked at it before we got to that point of the agenda, but that would be helpful. All right, so are any other questions for Mr. Stark? All right, then we'll move on to claims and payroll.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and as we said, we've seen the paper copies. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved claims and payroll. Seeing no other business, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank